The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning here at 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher. Tonight, the Bakersfield City Council members will once again take up our city's homelessness crisis and hear a report on LA's new anti-camping ordinance. The city of Los Angeles rolled out the new ordinance this week. It bans sitting, sleeping, or lying on any street, sidewalk, or any public right-of-way. Those actions are already covered by Bakersfield's existing ordinances. City officials and those working one-on-one with our local homeless population say while there is work to be done, Bakersfield has made significant progress in getting people off the streets.
We continue to focus heavily on getting more affordable housing units, getting more supportive services, working on that mental health issue, which is the biggest issue that's out there, because we need to create those bed spaces.
While it's going to take us a little while to right the ship, if you will, both the impacts of COVID and frankly the challenges of not having had enough resources coming into the community for decades, probably, around affordable housing. The future is very bright in terms of that because of the strong commitment we're seeing from both the city and the county.
By multiple metrics, Bakersfield's homeless problem is substantially less than elsewhere in the state. LA has an estimated unsheltered population of 41,000. Kern County a little over 2,000. And of California's 13 largest cities, Bakersfield, ranked number 9 in population, has the lowest number of homelessness per capita.
South Lake Tahoe remains under siege this morning. The ravenous Caldor Fire only growing in size, now nearing 200,000 acres and only 18% contained. NBC's Steve Patterson has more.
A field of ravenous flames swirling at the doorstep of thousands, laying siege to South Lake Tahoe, forcing a state of emergency. Overnight, through choking smoke, firefighters push back, working around the clock to protect homes in neighboring communities. But the sun rose over the Caldor Fire's ever-expanding plume, destroying another 5,000 acres overnight, now threatening more than 30,000 homes with more than 50,000 residents under mandatory evacuation. Monday's mass exodus causing gridlock as thousands of evacuees clogged the highways.
When you evacuate, you realize how many things you left behind.
At nearly 200,000 acres, the erratic Caldor Fire is now the country's highest priority as powerful winds spread the eastern front over bone-dry brush.
What we're experiencing is not normal. I hope it's not the new normal.
Red flag warnings are in place through Wednesday, with heavy winds and high temperatures in the forecast. In South Lake Tahoe, famous for its slow-paced charm, bustling casinos, and scenic beauty, now abandoned.
Heading into Labor Day weekend, this town should be packed with tourists. Instead, it is eerily quiet, save now for the wind, which is just starting to pick up at a critical time during this firefight.
Steve Patterson reporting. Here at home, good news on the fight to contain the French fire. Kern County Fire announced last night containment's up to 43%. Yet the fire continues to grow slowly, now at more than 25,700 acres. The fire, believed to be human-caused, started in the mountains west of Lake Isabella on August 18th. Evacuation orders continue to be downgraded in the areas surrounding the fire. Here's a look at the current evacuation map. The bright red is the fire perimeter. In lighter red, Alta Sierra and Shirley Meadows are still under evacuation orders, but many other communities, including Wofford Heights, have been allowed to go back home, although they remain on evacuation warning status. All the areas in yellow are under warning that they could have to evacuate. While the fire crews say the threat of this fire is not over, many of those returning home are thanking them profusely for their work saving homes.
I said, oh my gosh, let's get home, let's check our house. We came home. The fire department was amazing. All these workers up there did an awesome job.
Still very risky. It was still a fire that we'll talk about for a long time in our career. And it was touch and go. The guys were on point and they did their job well.
Firefighters say fuel reduction done by residents ahead of a fire can help save their homes. They recommend you clear dead leaves from your rain gutters, trim back trees hanging over your home, and clear fuel like dry brush at least away 100 feet from the structure in all directions. And a reminder, in an unprecedented move, the U.S. Forest Service has announced a temporary closure of all national forests within California due to the ongoing fire threat. The closure is in effect through September 17th. Officials say it's hoped that the closures will minimize risks to visitors and reduce potential for new fires.
5:07 is our time now when a skateboarder was killed last night on Taft Highway. According to Bakersfield police, a woman was driving on Taft Highway just before 9 o'clock last night when she hit a skateboarder who was riding in the road. The man died at the scene. The driver stayed at the scene, and BPD says she was not under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The name of the skateboarder will be released by the coroner.
Last year was the deadliest on record for homicides in Kern County, and we just wrapped up another deadly month. Almost every day for the first 16 days of August, someone was killed in Kern County. There were also 2 officer-involved shootings, one at an apartment on Stevens Drive, the other at the neighborhood of Autumn Crest Drive. 3 of the homicides this month are linked to domestic violence, and in a shooting suspected to be gang-related, an 11-year-old girl was killed when someone opened fire on her family's car.
Gang members don't show any regard for human life, be it adult or children, shooting into vehicles, just randomly firing shots. Innocent bystanders often get hit.
And a candlelight vigil was held last night for victims of violence in our community. The vigil was organized by advocacy group The Next Steps at the Liberty Bell in downtown. District Attorney Cynthia Zimmer, Bakersfield Mayor Karen Go, and Police Chief Greg Terry were among those who joined family members in calling for an end to the violence.
If you see something, say something. If you see signs of mental health, if you see signs of domestic violence, to point those people in the right direction of resources to help them, because it has a wave effect on our whole community.
By our count, there have been 93 homicides in Kern County this year.
After 20 years, the war in Afghanistan is over, leaving questions about what's next, how to work with the Taliban, now in charge, and get up to 200 Americans left their home, and safely. For the latest now, we turn to Tracy Potts covering Washington and the tough decisions facing Congress and the Biden administration.
The withdrawal is complete.
My fellow Americans, the war in Afghanistan is now over. It was time to end this war.
With nothing but disabled equipment left at the Kabul airport, President Biden defends his decision to leave.
I was not going to extend this forever war, and I was not extending a forever exit.
He called the evacuation of 124,000 people an extraordinary success.
Far from a success, this is a fiasco and a humiliating failure.
Despite the president's promise to get everyone out, up to 200 Americans were left behind.
And for those remaining Americans, there is no deadline. We remain committed to get them out if they want to come out.
But working with the Taliban is an unknown. A Taliban spokesman says they want good relations with the U.S.
They're going to have to earn everything from the international community through actions, not words.
Critics worry the Taliban will once again provide safe harbor for terrorists.
We are less safe as a result of this self-inflicted wound.
From the president, a stern warning.
To ISIS-K, we are not done with you yet.
A war ended. The mission of keeping America safe and getting Americans home still ongoing. Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirmed that Doha will now be the diplomatic office for that region. Tracy Potts, NBC News.
Welcome back. September is Suicide Prevention Month, a month to address a problem that is one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. It can affect anyone from any walk of life, but first responders, including law enforcement, firefighters, veterans, and active military, are more at risk. In fact, they're more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty. The co-founder of a new organization called the Code 9 Project talked about resources available to help people strengthen their coping mechanisms. She also talked about why it is that our first responders are so at risk.
After a while, your coping mechanisms are compromised because you're tired and your body needs rest. We are not giving our first responders, our law enforcement, and even our veterans and military an opportunity to rest. And I don't mean sleep, allowing their nervous systems to unload what they were just consumed with before we're asking them to do this very extraordinary job again in the same high-stress environment.
The Code 9 project has first responder specific meditations available at Apple Music, Google Play, and Amazon. Co-founder Brandy Lee Baker, who you just saw there, says they also have weekly peer support group meetings.
Recapping our top stories on this Wednesday morning. Tonight, Bakersfield City Council members will once again take up our city's homelessness crisis. Members will hear a report on LA's new anti-camping ordinance. It bans sitting, sleeping, or lying on any street, sidewalk, or public right-of-way. Those actions are already covered by Bakersfield's existing ordinances, but officials say work still needs to be done. The firefight is far from over in South Lake Tahoe as the Caldor Fire burns out of control. The blaze is nearly 200,000 acres and only 18% contained. Fire crews say the battle will be just as intense today. As we begin a new month, we look back at the incredible amounts of violence across Kern County in August. Almost every day for the first 16 days of August, someone was killed in the county. 3 of the homicides last month were linked to domestic violence. And in a shooting suspected to be gang-related, an 11-year-old girl was killed when someone opened fire on her family's car.
17 Court Watch this morning. A newly filed lawsuit alleges a Bakersfield High School student sexually abused a classmate in 2019 during class, the teacher standing just feet away. Attorney Daniel Rodriguez filed the suit against the Kern High School District, saying administrators and teachers failed to supervise or take adequate precautions against the teenage boy. Rodriguez says the student, 14 years old at the time, was also accused of sexually abusing 3 other female students in classrooms.
Typically, these sexual assaults on school campuses take place at the #1 location is the bathroom or some other place that's hidden from view. What makes this case different is that this sexual assault took place in broad daylight in a classroom full of students.
It's alleged the boy groped the girls over their clothing, but there is also believed to have been 1 case of skin-on-skin contact. Rodriguez says the 14-year-old boy pleaded no contest to criminal charges filed in connection with 3 of the alleged victims. 17 News has reached out to the district for comment, but has not heard back as of news time.
The man who skipped his day in court, where he was supposed to be sentenced for a crash that severely disabled a young woman, and took off to Mexico, will face a judge today. It has been nearly 5 years since the crash. Prosecutors say Esteban Gutierrez was driving drunk and ran a red light on Callaway Drive, hitting a car driven by 23-year-old Jordan Bacot. She can no longer speak, walk, or care for herself. Gutierrez pleaded no contest to DUI hit-and-run charges last year and told the court he promised to return for sentencing. He did not and took off to Mexico. After 18 months of being on the run, prosecutors say Gutierrez was arrested in Tijuana last week. Gutierrez faced a sentence of nearly 13 years in prison for the crash, but more penalties are likely to be added because of his failure to appear for his sentencing. We'll have more on this story tonight on 17 News at 5.
Meantime, CHP says it's beefing up patrols that weekend to catch intoxicated drivers for the upcoming holiday weekend. CHP says it's initiating a maximum enforcement period between September 3rd and 6 p.m. through Monday. That's Labor Day. Last year during the Labor Day weekend, CHP made 900 arrests for driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and 46 people died in crashes that weekend throughout the state. The CHP reminds the public to call 911 if they suspect an intoxicated driver.
The CHP is also hosting free car seat checkups to make sure children are properly protected in vehicles. It's happening Saturday from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. at the Bakersfield CHP office on Campagnoni Street. Appointments are required. Just call 396-6600 to schedule one.
5:35 is your time now. Kern County's 3rd surge in coronavirus continues, and there's sign of slowing. Public Health reporting 511 new cases yesterday, along with 3 new deaths. By our count, at least 96 people have died since vaccines became available to everyone 12 and older. Currently, nearly 46% of those eligible for the vaccine in Kern County have been fully vaccinated. The good news, Public Health says in the past 3 weeks, there's been a 32.5% increase in first doses of the COVID-19 vaccines administered.
We are at war, and we have been in this fight for a year and a half with the invisible enemy known as COVID-19. It is on the move once again and punishing those who did not respect its destructive power. For the first time, I was able to go on the front lines to the battlefield, looking at the sickest patients fighting for their next breath. I've covered mass shootings, homicides, and harrowing car crashes, but but I was not prepared for the harrowing images inside the Bakersfield Memorial Hospital. Nurses exhausting themselves to save the desperately ill. And sometimes their hard work isn't enough. I want to ask you about the vaccine. You said you wish you would have taken it.
I guess I didn't take it as seriously as I should have.
This virus is not the same that it was a year ago.
Our patients are sicker. This is an ugly, ugly enemy that we can't see.
It's taken a toll on us all emotionally.
Vaccination is the most effective, safest defense that we have.
What we're seeing now is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Down this hallway are 30 beds. All but 2 are filled with very sick patients with COVID-19. Each of them in their room hooked up to oxygen, struggling to breathe.
No one is safe from this virus.
There's a few practices I probably should have kept, but I didn't.
For those who recover, there's still damage.
Yeah, we're calling it long haulers disease. The people in ICU or the hospital that make it, their lungs are in really bad shape, and so there's going to be some scar tissue that's going to impact them probably for the rest of their life.
Here in the ICU, there are 8 beds. 7 of them are filled with COVID-positive patients, all of them sedated and clinging on to life. The youngest is just 40 years old.
We can't stop these senseless deaths.
We've had 20-year-olds die at our facility. They're healthy, they look good, and they just cannot get oxygen in their lungs.
I don't even know how many deaths that I've seen. I can't even count on 2 hands.
We had a 30-year-old last week that had his first baby newborn. Right before he was intubated, he got to see his baby on FaceTime with his wife. Never met his baby in person. That night, he passed away. So this is how serious this is.
I can't communicate via an iPad the emotion of how sorry I am that there's nothing we can do to save your mom's life, your brother's life. No one should have to go through that. And because of this virus, families, they're dying like this, left and right. I just want people to know that when their family members are here and they can't come see them, that we do uphold their dignity. They're not a number. They have a first and last name.
The amount of death has always been too much for frontline workers.
We are tired. The staff are very tired, and the doctors are very tired. But we have to press on.
But this third wave is proving to be more difficult for nurses, as it takes a toll on their well-being, trying to help patients stay alive when this pandemic could have been behind us.
It is an emotional roller coaster.
I know myself, I'm probably not taking the best care of myself.
It just is really frustrating for me to hear people just say COVID is kind of a made-up, we're making a big deal of it. It's really not that big of a deal.
It's beyond comprehension that somebody could think this is not something to worry about.
We are really frustrated because it's something that can be preventable, that can be taken care of. If everybody would have jumped on and get vaccinated, we will have maybe like 2 or 3 patients with COVID on this floor.
Hooked up to these machines and sedated in this bed. This is where a lot of patients sick with coronavirus took their last breath.
You think of your immune system as an army, right? You have a whole army and they can go fight a war, but if they haven't been constantly trained, they are not your best soldiers. So same thing with the immune system. Once you have a vaccine, your immune system is ready. It's like an army that is ready to go to war. So the moment your body gets exposed to the virus, your body is ready to fight.
I'm one of those who was not, I was anti-vax, and now this has turned everything around.
Vaccines are free and considered the best way to prevent severe illness and death from COVID-19. If you are 12 or older and would like to get the vaccine, you can sign up on the website myturn.ca.gov.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.